Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Daily Gwei Refuel, where we recap the latest news in the Ethereum ecosystem. I'm your host, Anthony Sassano, and it's the 17th of June, 2024. Alright everyone, let's get into it. So, some fresh ETF news over the weekend here. I don't know if I'd call it fresh news, more like fresh speculation actually. So Eric Balchunas, one of the Bloomberg guys that has been following the BTC and ETH ETFs for quite a while now, says that he's expecting the S1s or S-1s to be approved by July 2nd. Now, of course, this is just speculation on his behalf. It is not a concrete date. It's not like it was with the 19B4 approvals where there was a set date that had to be decided on. The S-1s are different here, so we don't actually have a date. And as you guys know, and I've speculated before that I think it would happen early July, more specifically around July 8th. But again, that is just a guess. It's I guess like an educated and informed guess based on the facts available at the time that I made those guesses there. But yeah, it's nothing concrete. Now, of course, this can happen earlier too. I mean, there are some people that think that if what we see this week, if the S-1s kind of have little feedback and little back and forth between the SEC and the issuers, it means we could see these things start trading as early as next week. So, a full week before, I guess, July 2nd here, or, a full 2 weeks before July 8th, as I speculated. Now, I would love to be wrong on this. At this point in time, I just want these things to go live. It's kind of annoying that we've had this lag here, and there's been a lot of speculation around what it's going to look like when it does go live compared to the BTC ETFs, but I think I've mentioned this on the refuel before. The circumstances with where between the BTC ETFs and the ETH ETFs are so completely different. There are too many different variables that you can't really draw too many comparisons between the two. I think, just some of the variables off the top of my head is that the BTC ETFs, I think the market knew at least 3 months in advance that there was a high chance that those were going to get approved. Whereas the ETH ETFs, the market assumed, I think in the 2 to 3 months leading up to May 23rd, that the ETH ETFs were going to get denied. So that alone is a huge, substantial difference to the BTC ETF with the ETH one. And then when it comes to flows, with the BTC ETFs, it was the first crypto asset ETF. It'd been like 10 years of pent-up demand because there were people trying to get BTC ETFs for 10 years. And at the time, the market was raging. But Jan 10th, the whole market was raging up. Meme coins were going nuts. BTC was going nuts, obviously. It did sell off after that, but then continue up. But now we're in kind of like a crab, sideways kind of thing. It hasn't been just up only. So the ETH ETFs are launching it into a different environment here as well. So I'm curious to see what the flows look like. I'm bullish that the flows are going to be nice. They're not going to be as much as the BTC ones. Like, I'm definitely not, have my head in the clouds with the, sniffing hopium thinking that it's going to be like that. No, not at all. But I'm curious to see what it is actually like. And again, like, as I've said before, the ETF stuff is a passive long-term vehicle. You can't just look at the first week worth of flows and judge the ETH ETF based on that. I don't think that's the right way to do it at all. But those are like the two main things that I can think of amongst all of the other variables that are different between the two. So I don't think comparing the two actually makes much sense here. But we'll see what happens. Like, we're very close now, guys. I mean, even if it launches on July 8th, the latest prediction that I've seen so far, it's only like 3 weeks away, right? Or just over 3 weeks away. So we're quite close here. But it is annoying that with the BTC ETFs, they were trading, a couple of days after I think they got approved or something like that, or within a day of them getting approved. Whereas with the ETH ETFs, by the time they go live, if they go live on July 2nd, it'll have been 5 weeks since they got approved, which is kind of annoying. Almost 6 weeks, which is kind of annoying that we've had to wait that long. But at the same time, it's okay because the market has been basically sideways the entire time anyway. I mean, I know ETH had that initial kind of pump up to 4K from 3K due to the ETF surprise approval there. But other than that, yeah, the market's generally been sideways, with most of the market actually trending down and going to its lowest prices before, I guess, the run-up that we had over the last 6 to 9 months, so to speak, which is actually quite healthy, I think, as I've talked about a lot on the refuel before. I just didn't see any net new money coming in, and that means that the prices weren't sustainable. It's just crypto natives, trading with each other. Like, there's no net new money coming into anything but BTC. What do you think's going to happen? That's the way I look at things here. But yeah, as I said in my tweet here, study July 2nd. If it gets approved before then I think that's good. I want to be wrong about July 8th, even if it's just July 2nd. I'm happy with that. I want to be wrong about July 8th there. But I mean, the Bloomberg guys, besides the ETH ETFs, they've been very good, I think, around this stuff. I know that, I've given them a bit of shit before for some comments that they've made. Specifically, Eric made his small potatoes comment about ETH. And obviously, they were quite bearish on the ETH ETFs being approved, and then all of a sudden they switched, and then they were saying that basically it was due to political winds changing. When now we kind of know that it wasn't due to that at all. It was due to the facts and circumstances as I described them, and many others described them as well. It wasn't just me, of course, but generally they've been okay with this sort of stuff. It's their world, you know. They're plugged into it. They've got sources. They've got the information there available to them. So I think that, you know, Eric's saying July 2nd here should be accurate. I mean, if it happens before or after, that doesn't really matter, but we'll see. We'll see what happens there. But anyway, enough on that. You know, I basically just turned a little bit of news into 5 minutes of content there, but hey, that's my job. But anyway, moving on from that. So the blob market is now in ultrasound territory. So what do I mean by this? Well, basically, we're now at the target for blobs. So you can see here that I discussed this the other day, but we're basically over target for blob usage right now. So the target is 3 blobs per block. We're over that right now, and we're up to around 3.7. Based on the 2-hour moving average. Now, I believe this is due to the ZK Sync airdrop, because everyone's claiming that right now, which means that ZK, you can see here, ZK Sync blobs are bigger. You can actually see this on the chart. So that's why blobs have gone into, I guess, like blob gas price discovery. So we'll see if that sustains itself. But really, the general trend, as I've described, I think the other day on the refuel, has been up for like 5 weeks now with blobs. And the reason why I call it ultrasound blobs is because if you go to the Ultrasound Money website and you look at the blob section here, you can see that we're now burning ETH due to blobs, because underneath the target, blobs are free. Essentially, there's no fee market kicking in. Blobs are basically free here. Whereas if you're over the target of 3 blobs per block, the fee market kicks in, and now you're starting to burn ETH. Now, as I said, like, we don't know how sustainable this is going to be, because it's due to the ZK Sync airdrop, and this is only based on like the last few hours. But at the same time, the trend is up, guys. Like, as I showed, like for the last 5 weeks, but regardless of what's been happening, the trend has been up. And it's actually probably been longer than 5 weeks. It's probably been like 6-7 weeks actually. If you take it from the lows here, 6, 7, 8 weeks from the lows here. And as I've said before, we can expect this to keep going up, because you can see here in this chart that blobs posted over the last 3 months. This pink here, that's Tycho. That didn't exist before, I guess, like May 25th. Before that, they weren't even in it. So they come online, and now all of a sudden they're using blobs, and they're basically making the, I guess, like blob usage go up, which eventually gets to the target and makes flip fees go up. And then, as you can see in this other chart, up here, ZK Sync's blobs are heavier right now, because there's a lot more activity happening on ZK Sync, and that's being posted down to L1. So as we get more of the L2s that come online, or more of the roll-ups that use blobs come online, and as we get more usage on these things, that's just going to keep scaling up and up and up, and we're going to be permanently above target. This is the same thing that happens with L1, where we're basically permanently above, having the fee market. So, it's not free transactions on layer 1 or near free transactions. We're permanently in a fee market, or a relatively high fee environment there, because we have so many users on the chain. Like right now, it's relatively low. It's at like 5 Gwei, but that is actually, I think like 20-30% of that is definitely due to the blobs, going online in March. But outside of that, as the market heats up and as things heat up on L1 again, the L1 fees will go up just like the blobs go up. So it doesn't matter like how, the fact that we scaled, it's going to get filled up. And then we're going to keep scaling from there. As I've described before, we can increase the size and count of blobs, and we've got things like PeerDAS coming down the pipeline here. But it's great to see that the thesis is just playing out, guys. The usage is there. Like, we're seeing this play out. This is not a pipe dream anymore. This is not something we're just talking about. This is not me ranting about this on the refuel. This is real, and it's real users doing real things on these chains, which is really great to see. So you can go check out Hill Dobby's blobs dashboard to check this out for yourself. But that is basically the reason why we're in ultrasound territory on blobs right now, the ZK Sync airdrop stuff. But again, like, we are very close to target regardless of that, like on just any given normal day at this point, which is great to see. And there are going to be more roll-ups coming online in the future. Like, don't think that this is it. There's definitely not it. There's going to be so many more coming online. And there's going to be like L3s coming online on top of those L2s or top of those roll-ups, which basically means that more and more usage is going to flow down to those roll-ups. Will settle down on them, and then they'll settle down to L1. one. So yeah, I mean, if anything, like I'm so bullish on usage of rollups going up that I don't have any doubts that we're going to be above target territory permanently quite soon. But then, as I said, we can, if it's a critical thing, we can actually just do a hard fork where we raise where we alter the count and size of blobs in order to give scalability. Like if we had to, for some reason, if blobs went absolutely nuts and L2 fees started skyrocketing, we could do that. But the general trend is we might do it at every hard fork. And then we've got PeerDAS coming, hopefully in the next fork, which is, as you guys know, Q1 of next year. So it's a cat and mouse game, but we're a pretty good cat at this point. We know what to do. We know how to upgrade the cat. We put some turbos on the cat, right? We put some rockets on the cat, and then it can catch the mouse faster and faster. But hey, the mouse gets faster too as we're chasing that scalability increase as time goes on there. But anyway, you can go check out this blob dashboard for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below for you to do so. All right, speaking of rollups, the Rollup.wtf website that I showed on the Refuel about maybe a couple of weeks ago, I think. I spoke about this the other day, but it was updated with essentially a bunch of different metrics here, showing which DA layer each rollup is using, or each L2 and L3 are using, what they're settling to, their gas usage per second, their TPS, so on and so forth. As I said, I did show this the other day, so I don't want to go into the same stuff I talked about the other day. But one thing I didn't talk about the other day was the fact that this isn't just L2s, this is L3s as well. So you can actually see here when it says settlement where these chains are settling to. So right now, one of the most used L3s is Proof of Play, which is, I believe, a gaming L3 on top of the Arbitrum, or using the Arbitrum Nitro stack here. So this is not using blobs for data, it's using AnyTrust, which is an off-chain DA solution made by Arbitrum, and it is settling to Arbitrum. So it's settling to Arbitrum, which then settles down to Ethereum. That's why it's an L3, right? Because it's sitting at the top here, settles down to an L2, and then settles down to the L1 Ethereum. The same with things like Degen Chain that I've spoken about before, and a bunch of others here. So it's really cool to see this in real time, basically, that not only do we get to see the DA that these things are using, but also what they're settling to, and also the stack that they're using too. Like, you look at this list here, and as I said before, you may look at this and be like, oh, okay, like how many L2s do we need? When in reality, the way I'm looking at it these days is that we're just like a bunch of super chains. Like you could consider all of the Arbitrum Nitro chains to be part of the same super chain, all of the OP stack chains to be part of the same super chain. They're not by default. They can choose to join or not join, but the incentive is there to join the super chain, basically. So essentially, most of these things are part of the same ecosystem. And then you can scroll down to the standalones, like, Polygon, ZK EVM, Scroll, which is just using Scroll's infrastructure, and same with Tyco here, which is, depending on the kind of like the way you look at it, is its own kind of, I guess I wouldn't call it a super chain, but its own L2 ecosystem, which is critically important here. And then some people gave me some feedback on looking at the TPS and saying that megagas per second or kilobytes per second is probably a better way to kind of measure these things. And look, I've argued this before. I've argued that TPS is generally flawed as well, but I think when you're looking at the megagas per second or kilobytes per second, you have to adjust that for where the data is being settled on, because these things are limited by their data layers. So for example, something like Proof of Play that's using AnyTrust DA and not blobs can do and process more data per second, because AnyTrust allows you to do that, whereas blobs are very limited. As you guys know, as I was just explaining, blobs are 3 blobs per block. I don't know what the size is right now for it, but it is quite limited, right? In terms of the kilobytes per second throughput here, the data throughput here, and same with something like Celestia, it's more than blobs. So I think that you have to basically normalize these things, and it's quite difficult to do because of the fact that they use different DA, they have different tech stacks that they're using as well, which can lend itself to different ways of looking at it. And TPS, even megagas per second or kilobytes per second, it's not going to give you the most accurate, stats here. But at the same time, it will give you a kind of nice picture. It will give you a general picture of what's going on. You could say that, okay, well, Base is one of the most used chains, and it's doing 36 TPS right now. That makes sense. Same with Arbitrum 1. Base and Arbitrum 1 are the two most used rollups right now on Ethereum. Proof of Play is the most used L3. Blast coming in third here as one of the most used rollups using blobs. So when you look at it from that perspective, you can get a general idea. But at the same time, if you want to compare usage just based on these raw numbers, it's not going to go well for you because of the fact that of the things I outlined before, how there's different ways of measuring all of this. But is this actually relevant in the end? Like for anything other than us nerds? Probably not, because all that's relevant for the end user is that they're getting a fast and cheap experience on chain. That's literally all that matters, guys. That is a North Star. Fast transactions and cheap transactions. And as I've said before, fast is like 1 to 2 seconds. Anything longer than 2 seconds, not a go. And cheap, it doesn't have to be like basically free. Like, yeah, okay, that would be ideal. But there's this kind of Goldilocks zone for fees where too cheap and you get too much spam, too expensive and you obviously bleed users and you price out users. So there is really this Goldilocks zone, and I think it actually is around 1 cent. That's the kind of the Goldilocks zone that I imagine, especially for things that or for kind of I guess like for everyday users. When it comes to bots, it's a different story, but for everyday users, like how many transactions are you doing per day? Even if you're doing like 100 transactions per day at 1 cent per transaction, that's only $1 a day. And obviously, depending on where you are in the world, that's going to mean a lot more to you than otherwise. Like if you're in a first world country, $1 a day is not going to be that much to you. But if you're in a third world country, of course, $1 a day is heaps to you. So I think that like there's a Goldilocks zone there. I think it's around 1 cent, and I don't expect the majority of users to be doing 100 transactions per day. Like you don't even do that in the normal financial system, right? And there's no reason to. Like if you're making, for example, if you're paying for something, are you doing 100 payments per day? No, probably not, unless you're like a massive shopper or something like that. Like a regular person's day is doing a few payment transactions per day. Maybe you do some banking related stuff. Maybe you swap some tokens around, whatever. But like, I highly doubt anyone besides, mega power users is going to be doing that much transactions per day. So I think it's going to be interesting to see where we land on that in that Goldilocks zone. It's going to be interesting to see what how cheap things get, because not every chain is created equal. But as I said, you make it too cheap and then you just suffer from spam, and then the bots come and the bots will fill up everything. I mean, MEV generally plays a huge part in this as well, but that's the way I generally look at it there. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't aim for cheaper than 1 cent per transaction or something like that. And I'm not saying that my, I guess, assumption here that that's the best price to be at for the Goldilocks zone is correct. But there's also other ways to handle this as well, where the apps will pay the fee. So if the fee is 1 cent and the app is paying it, then it won't even matter to the end user because it'll basically be free if it's baked into their order and things like that. So yeah, when it comes to fees, you can go in so many different directions, and there's so many different opinions on it, and there's so many assumptions that you have to make. At the end of the day, I think that the only truth that we have is what people are willing to pay to use the chains, and over the long term, especially, not the short term, because obviously during short term really bullish manias, people were willing to pay a lot to get their transactions on chain. But I'm talking about the kind of the sustainable thing here. And when it comes to L2s, I mean, most of the time, if I go to gasfees.io, you can actually see the L2s that are using blobs for data. They're very cheap right now. Like, for example, Base is less than a cent for a Uniswap trade right now. Arbitrum is also less than a cent. That will go up as obviously the blob fee market goes up. And I believe this is looking in the past 24 hours, so this probably hasn't been adjusted yet. But in the normal case, yeah, it's under a cent already here. And I don't hear anyone complaining about that at all. And of course, as I said, it depends on what that money means to you, depends on where you are in the world, but that seems to be where things are right now. But anyway, you can go check out the Rollup.wtf website for yourself to check out all the new things going on here. All right, so I just wanted to quickly shout out Superphiz's GitHub repository, or README, I should say, here, which basically has a list of different Ethereum dashboards that you should be paying attention to, you should be looking at to track a bunch of different things. Now, here, Superphiz has basically put these into different categories here. You can see that there are staking dashboards, there are layer 2 dashboards, ones that track blobs, MEV, so on and so forth. So if you're interested in keeping up with all of the metrics related to that sort of stuff, you should definitely go check out this from Superphiz. I think I've highlighted this before, but he has updated it. So there are a bunch of new dashboards in there. And then you can also submit a pull request if you would like to get a dashboard included that's not on here yet, if you think it's relevant. So definitely go do that. But once again, a huge kudos to Superphiz for maintaining this and originally putting it together. It's a great resource. I use it quite often, but I saw him tweet about it again today. So I just wanted to share it again on the refuel here. All right, so to round out today's episode, I came across this great tweet from Lido Cohen where he basically listed out a few of the most unique applications that he's seen so far on Base. Now, I believe I've talked about pretty much all of these except one of them before on the refuel, but I did want to go through them again because I think that as an ecosystem we don't put enough focus on apps, right? We put a lot of focus on infrastructure, put a lot of focus on speculation, but when it comes to the actual apps themselves, we tend to not focus too much on them because maybe they're not as exciting as infrastructure and they're not as exciting if they're not a speculative app, right? Or maybe that it's just not something that people care to talk about for whatever reason. So I do want to cover the ones that Lido Cohen talked about today. And the first one is Damo. I think that's how you say it, or Dymo. It's probably Dymo because it's. I think it's maybe a play on DAI, the MakerDAO stablecoin there. But essentially, this is like a crypto Venmo payments rail, and it's backed by a fair few big names. You can see in their seed round, they're backed by people like Vitalik, Justin Drake, and a bunch of other core devs here, a bunch of good founders and people in the Ethereum ecosystem. So yeah, I mean, I think from what I've seen and who I've talked to about them, they're a legit team. They've been around for a while, but they're basically trying to make the simplest payments protocol that they can, and they're using Base to do that and using USDC to do that. And sorry, I shouldn't call it a protocol. From what I understand, it is an app that you can use here, and it's just very, very simple. So definitely go check that out if you're interested in crypto payments. Then there's ZK P2P, which I've highlighted before. This is being built by some of my old team members from SET, and basically this is a trustless on-ramp and off-ramp to crypto or from crypto using ZK technology. As I said, I've highlighted this before. Essentially how it works is that you can use, I believe, Venmo or other kind of payment gateways that they support here, such as Revolut, in order to onboard into crypto without having to go through KYC or anything like that. It's fully done using ZK proofs. It is a really cool flow and it's done relatively quickly. It's in alpha right now and you can try it for yourself at zkp2p.xyz. It is limited to a small amount of dollars or euros. I don't know what the exact amount is, but it's a few $100s or a few €100, I think, per transaction there. And that's not limited by what ZKP2P can do. It's limited by the fiat on-ramp like Venmo and Revolut and stuff like that. And because, as the name suggests, it's peer-to-peer, it matches you with people that are either wanting to sell ETH for USDC, for example, or buy ETH for USDC, and vice versa from there. Next up on Lido Cohen's list is Blackbird, which is a restaurant loyalty app. Now, this is the one that I don't think I've talked about on the refuel before, and I haven't actually used myself, but we all know about loyalty apps generally. Well, this one is built on crypto rails. It's built on Base, from my understanding here, and you can go check this out for yourself. I'll link it in the YouTube description below, but it's basically an app on the App Store here. Yeah, it's on the App Store. You can see it on my screen. And you can download it and get basically membership points, and I believe they have a token associated with it, or I'm not sure if that's the way they name the points. Yeah, as I said, like I only came across this really today, and I haven't really checked this out yet, but I think I will. But I don't know if they support Australia. I think they maybe only support the US or something like that. I'm not sure. I'll have to check it out. I don't want to give out false information here, but you can go check that out for yourself as well. And then last up here, of course, we have Farcaster, which I don't think I need to go into. Farcaster has been a staple in the Ethereum ecosystem for quite a while now. It has been a staple in the Base ecosystem for a while, and it has kept growing. I mean, I know I haven't had Farcaster tabs up as much recently, but I had a couple up today. It's been quite difficult for me to use both Twitter and Farcaster, to be honest, because of the fact that I am trying to limit my Twitter usage and trying to limit my social media usage in general. And that means that Farcaster has sometimes taken a back seat there. And it is generally hard to use two of very similar social medias. I know that Farcaster obviously has its own kind of way of doing things, its own way of doing social media, its own way of like doing things like with different front ends. You've got Warpcast, you've got Hey, and you've got a few others out there compared to Twitter. And, Twitter seems to be going in the wrong direction, I think, and has been since Elon took over. I haven't been shy about voicing that opinion. Recently, they made likes private, which I thought was just really dumb, honestly. And I feel like they just do things based on whatever Elon wants to see done, based on his personal feelings, not what's based on what's best for Twitter. So I'm glad we have Farcaster as an alternative here. the thing is the Firecaster is still crypto heavy and crypto dominated. I'm sure that Dan Romero and his team, the original team that built Firecaster, are planning to do things to try and bring people that aren't in crypto onboarded onto there. But I guess like Twitter dominates everything basically. Like crypto Twitter these days is actually pretty bad. It's basically mostly speculation, mostly gambling stuff on there, mostly just shit posting on there. I'm finding the signal to be very, very low on Twitter these days for crypto stuff. Whereas Firecaster is I think like I would say 50-50. There is a bit of noise on there because of the financial incentives, but the information on there is pretty cool. The ETH people are definitely more active on there, I believe, than Twitter. But outside of crypto Twitter, like Twitter generally is very big in a bunch of different areas. I mean, there's Twitter areas for everything. There's crypto Twitter, there's politics Twitter, right? There's sports Twitter, so on and so forth, and it's extremely active. TradFi Twitter, with a lot of engagement on there, but there's also a lot of bots, so you don't know how much of it is real engagement versus fake, so on and so forth. There are bots on Firecaster too, but there is a cost there, so it's less, and so on and so forth. But generally, from what I found, especially since I came back from my break, crypto Twitter is just not a very high signal place anymore. I mean, I tried to get what I can out of it so I can cover it on the refuel, but yeah, it's kind of sad, to be honest, because I've been on Twitter for a very long time now. I built my initial following on there, made a lot of friends on there, but as time has gone on, it just keeps spiraling. It just keeps going down this like degen hole, which like it's fine. You can do degen stuff. You can buy whatever assets you want, gamble on whatever you want. But when it becomes like the only thing that you see when you go on Twitter, and then you see the drama around it of influencers doing stupid things and people becoming main characters that shouldn't be main characters and blowing themselves up or making a fool of themselves, and it's just so tiring after being in the industry for so long to see this same stuff play out over and over again. So I'm personally, as I said, like trying to limit my exposure to social media in general, especially crypto Twitter, because of the fact that it's just a very high noise environment now. And it's not even that like I scroll through and I kind of lose faith in humanity when I read the things, or I get jaded by it. I'm over that hump now, I think, where I'm basically like indifferent to it, but at the same time I'm doom scrolling on there sometimes and being like, why am I even doing this? Like, what's the point? There's so many other productive things I could be doing, so I'm definitely trying to do that, and I highly recommend that. As I say, guys, I've been on Twitter for a very long time. It's like crypto Twitter for like over 6 years now. And it is in its worst place it's ever been. There is just barely any signal on there. I've been covering Twitter stuff on the refuel for a very long time, so I think I have a pretty good, I guess, like grasp on what it was and what it is today. So if you want higher signal stuff, I don't know where you're going to get it, to be honest, because it feels like I actually saw a tweet today. I don't remember who tweeted it, but they basically said that it feels like we're in a mini dark ages right now, where essentially all of the smart conversations and all of the intelligent conversations around crypto have basically retreated into private Discords, private Telegram groups, DMs, instead of being done in the public environment. And it's like a mini dark ages where that knowledge is not being shared widely anymore. It's basically being kept tight knit, because if you want to do anything and want to share anything widely, you get made fun of. I mean, perfect example of this, and maybe not so much in the knowledge kind of part of things, but more so in the culture side of things, is that recently, and I think a couple of weeks ago, Vitalik was calling out the celeb coins and calling out the grifters, basically saying, this is just a pure grift, it's pure scammy, it's really detrimental to the ecosystem, let's do better, right? Let's do better, let's maybe donate some of the proceeds to charity, let's be regenerative about it. And he was made fun of for that, basically, and he wasn't cancelled for it, but like people gave him shit for it. Then recently you had Kobe saying the same thing. You guys know who Kobe is. He's very famous on Twitter, did the Up Only podcast. I mean, I'm sure everyone's aware of who Kobe is here. And he has that Echo platform that he's doing as well. But he said, I mean, basically the same stuff. And then everyone's praising him for it, saying, oh my God, thank you for calling this out. Finally, you're our guiding light, so on and so forth. And I'm just like, what the fuck? Like 2 weeks ago, Vitalik was saying this. 3 weeks ago, he was saying the exact same stuff, and you cancelled him for it. Well, not cancelled him for it, but you gave him so much shit for it, and you made fun of him for it. But then when Kobe says it, it's suddenly fine. So there's like this cultural kind of thing here where certain people will say something and they'll get made fun of, and people will say that they're just an ETH maxi, or they just care about their bags, or so on and so forth. And then other people will say the exact same things, and because people maybe don't associate with those people with any sort of ecosystem or being a maxi, or for whatever reason, they'll take that more seriously. And obviously this isn't just unique to crypto, but that's the kind of culture that's now being bred here, where you can't really call anything out. You guys know that I'm big on calling stuff out, but I don't do it on Twitter. I do it in the Discord channel, in the Daily Gwei Discord channel. I do it on here. I've called out so many of these grifters and these scammers plenty of times in the past, but I learned not to do it on Twitter because I learned that people will just attack me for it, and I don't want to be attacked over it. Like, I don't want to deal with that. I'd rather just, say it to you guys who are listening to my podcast, say it in the Daily Gwei Discord channel, and that's it. You guys learn from that. You guys can avoid that if you want. And yeah, I'm hoping some of the stuff that I've called out over the years have helped you avoid getting blown up, and so on and so forth. But anyway, I just realized I've ranted for a very long time about all of that, but that's actually been on my mind for a while, and I'm glad that I got that out of my system because I hope it resonates with you guys. But the TLDR is that Twitter these days is very low signal, very, very low. It's the lowest signal it's ever been. So I wouldn't be consuming it too much, and I wouldn't be trying to get good information about Ethereum from it, from Twitter. You can obviously keep paying attention to the Daily Gwei because I'll give you guys the best information I can about Ethereum. Bankless does a bang up job of things. You have Christine Kim as well with her Infinite Jungle podcast, focuses on a lot of the ETH core dev stuff. She also does written reports as well. You guys know her. I've covered her a bunch of times on here. And there are a bunch of other podcasts and things you can pay attention to, newsletters. You don't need crypto Twitter, honestly. I don't think you actually need it anymore, to be honest. Unless you enjoy following the drama, you enjoy following the degen stuff, like that's fine, use it for that. But if you're looking for high signal Ethereum related stuff, it's not the best place anymore, I don't think, guys. But anyway, on that note, that's going to be it for today. So thank everyone for listening and watching. Be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the newsletter, join the Discord channel, and I'll catch you all tomorrow. Thanks, everyone.